Okay, so a lot of students have been asking questions about these types of problems, which I'm really glad you are. I'm going to try to walk you through my thought process and hope that it helps you uh, think through the problem. So we have a supply equation. Let's see, let's go. Well, we have a supply equation here, which is given here. Notice this is already y equals mx plus b, so that's nice. Then we have a demand equation right here. Also notice it's still y equals mx plus b. So those will make them nice to graph, typically in that form. The x in this case represents price per unit, so maybe like $3.79 per gallon, right? Obviously, right now that's not the right thing, but something like that, or $1 or like 5.76 per pound, whatever. So we have a price per unit. Then our y-axis is the number of units sold, or the quantity. So here we can see already that our pricing, this could be pretty expensive. So we're talking about things that are priced quite high. So things that are costing $10 per item, or maybe $50 per item. So again, this is our, oh, this is our price per unit. Versus over here, we have our quantity. So how many units are we selling? So we're talking about selling hundreds of units, right? So our numbers are going to be pretty big, but that's okay. We are trying to find a break-even point. This is where however much we're selling, and for however much we have then for the supply, and however much we have for the demand, they equal each other. Again, this is when supply equals demand. Visually or graphically, this is when they're the same, so it's when we're seeing their intersection. Alright? Hence why it's called a break-even point. I know now it's hard to say the word, but break-even point. Okay? So we need to graph these two lines. So starting with the supply equation, I can see my y-intercept is 200, so I can plot 200 pretty nicely. Looking at my slope, again, plotting 200 wasn't bad. This slope, which is the same as 5 over 1, that's typically nice to graph, but notice our scales here, these numbers are so big. It's going to be really hard to move up 5 units. Yes, watch out for that. Moving up 5 is not moving up 5 of these spaces. Every single space here is 50 units. Moving up 5, we could barely see. Moving to the right 1 is not moving over 1 space, because 1 space is $10, our price per unit. So it's just moving just barely to the right. So that'd be really hard to see. So this slope of 5 over 1 is actually really hard to work with on this graph. Notice since our numbers are so big, it would be much easier if we could think of the slope in bigger numbers. So a lot of times when we've done slope, we've had to reduce it, or we've liked to reduce it to smaller numbers. In this case, we want to unreduce the slope to make it to nicer numbers. So to unreduce this, I'm going to multiply by 10 over 10, because 10 over 10 is really 1, so multiplying by 1, to make it look like 50 over 10, which would represent 50 more units for $10 in price per unit. Now that I can graph. So back at 200, I can now go up 50. Oh, right there, easy. And I can now go over 10. Now watch out, they're different scale, but 10 is one space. So up 50 over 10. I can do it again if I want, up 50 over 10. Up 50 over 10. Up 50 over 10. So on and so forth. That kind of thing. We can do that. So we know we have this line, which again is representing our supply. Same concept and same strategy for demand. I can plot my y-intercept pretty easily. Boom, right there. This slope is really like negative 5 over 1. Once again, that's going to be really hard to show on this graph. But if I unreduce it, I can make it look like negative 50 over 10. So that means I'm going to go down 50 to the right 10, down 50 to the right 10, down 50 to the right 10, so on and so forth. So it's going to look like this. Okay? Now, in these scenarios, it's not always that the slopes are going to be opposites. Okay? But once you graph your two lines, we again are looking for this break-even point. Our break-even point is when they're the same. So for us, the break-even point is right here, and we can see that by using our slope. The coordinates of this break-even point are 20, 300, which means we're saying $20 per unit, and you're selling 300 units. Okay? But that's the value of what our, that's the coordinates are of our break-even point. So, main idea is you're graphing a line using y equals mx plus b. That skill is the same. However, because the numbers are so big, and notice the axes are going by different scales as well, we need to be careful how we use our slope. So it's better to unreduce the slope to get to numbers that are nicer to work with. Then just be careful as you plot that and you graph it. And if you did it correctly, you're probably going to find a place where they have the same value, where however much we're making, where the supply meets the demand. And so that's our break-even point. Boom, you should be able to see it. There you go.